It's DFS season here at Club Fantasy FFL, and we're breaking down all of the divisional round games. This video is going to focus on the Washington Commanders versus the Detroit Lions. Stay tuned for our DFS Showdown slate breakdown. Oh, Captain, my Captain, this is Club Fantasy's DFS Showdown Slate video series. I'm your host, Joshua Hudson. You can find me at the One Hudsonian. He is our DFS expert, taking a small little break from his winter ski vacation, Mr. Austin Amandolia. You can find him at Austin_FFL. Austin, you ready to talk Commanders versus Lions?
Yeah, this is sneakily probably my favorite matchup of the weekend.
Oh, I 100% agree, and I really want it to be like a 41-38 showdown because it has all the makings of it, if I'm being quite honest. So, real quick, Austin, tell the great people that are listening where they can play these DFS showdowns against us here at Club Fantasy.
Yes, we have a league on DraftKings. If you follow the link in the show description, you can join that league. We have a contest running for every single game this weekend. We also have a Saturday slate contest and a Sunday slate contest. So you have 6 ways to play with us this weekend. Try and take our money, or just try and prove that you're better than us, because apparently we now, all of a sudden, that is the playoffs, know what's up.
Yeah, we won all 9 of the contests last week. So, kudos to you and your advice, because I took home 4 of them.
Yeah.
And before we get into all of the information, be sure to head over to trophysmack.com/WOFF. That's WOFF. Our sister site, Women in Fantasy Football, have a great partnership with Trophy Smack, all designed to help us continue to support women in sports. All of your achievement-based needs, trophies, belts, rings, wall smack to decorate your office, hallways, you name it, they got it. It's all customizable. Show off that championship swag and that championship attitude. Trophysmack.com/WOFF, WOFF. And from now until January 31st, use promo code WOFF, WOFF at checkout, and get yourself a free ring with the purchase of a belt or trophy. Once again, trophysmack.com/WOFF, WOFF. All right, Austin. First section, Captain Chalk. These are the chalky captains that everyone is likely to pick because they know the name. The players are just that damn good. Jaden Daniels has been on a tear lately. And while he might be chalky, I think he might be the optimal captain here, honestly.
Yeah, there's a decent amount of times where I will advise not playing the chalk captain. This is not one of them. I think it's very much worth it. And I think, too, there's a degree to which he might be a little bit under-rostered from what you would expect because Washington is not favored in this matchup. But Jaden Daniels has just been so freaking good down this stretch. And funny enough, despite what they did to Sam Darnold in Week 18, the Detroit Lions have allowed the most points to the quarterback position of any team in the divisional round. And by a fine margin, they've allowed an average of 26 points per game to the quarterback position since Week 15. That includes that game against Sam Darnold. So some quarterbacks really got there. They're not going to be able to mess with Sam Darnold mess with Jaden Daniels the way that they did Sam Darnold. Jaden Daniels is going to be able to scramble, going to be able to be a little bit more creative, get outside the pocket, make some moves. And I think this ends up being a shootout, and Jaden Daniels plays a big role in Washington staying relevant and potentially winning this game.
For all of the reasons that you like Lamar Jackson, transfer that to Jaden Daniels, because holy shit, this kid is fun to watch. And that pains me to say as an Eagles fan. Just throwing that out there. All right, our next section here is the Mutineer. These are going to be your contrarian captain choices that offer some variety and upside in larger scale tournaments. Let's flip to the other sideline, and let's talk about probably one of my favorite players in the NFL right now, Jahmyr Gibbs.
Yeah, he is clearly the best running back in the Detroit Lions backfield at this point. I know David Montgomery has been injured, and so of course he's gotten overshadowed from that front. But even when they were both in the backfield together, Jahmyr Gibbs is just more flashy, able to get more explosive plays. David Montgomery plays an important role for sure, but Jahmyr Gibbs is the better running back, and Washington is not a good run defense, and so this is actually a really good spot for both running backs. And I like Jahmyr Gibbs because while I think it's interesting to play David Montgomery, he is coming back off of injury. And so it is a little bit risky. We don't know exactly how many touches that he will be getting. And so Jahmyr Gibbs may still see like 60 to 70% of the running back load. But he also has the pass game utilization upside. He scores lots of touchdowns. They like using him in the red zone in creative ways. It's just there's a recipe here where Jahmyr Gibbs could touch the ball 20, 25 times, get at least 100 scrimmage yards and 2 touchdowns. And if he's doing that, he's probably the optimal, especially if this game doesn't shoot out the way we want it to and it hits the under and ends up being more of a slogfest, which I think is also could be because of the way Washington will play. Washington slowed the game down last week against Tampa Bay. They played clock control, game control. They by far won the time of possession battle. And so I could see this being a game where you only get a few drives from both teams. And that could actually really play to Jahmyr Gibbs, who can score those touchdowns and get those explosive plays.
Yeah, it's interesting you say that because in just his rookie season, I believe the stat was Jaden Daniels has more career games with 0 turnovers and 0 punts than Tom Brady, Peyton Manning, Joe Montana, like some of the all-time greats have combined. Like it's unreal how he's able to control the pace of the game, considering how explosive he can be, right? Which again, you're going against a very explosive Detroit Lions offense. That's how you beat them. You have to keep them off the field. Washington has proven that they can slog it out. You know, they've got a decent running game with Brian Robinson, Austin Eckler healthy. Obviously, we know what Jaden Daniels can do. Will be very interesting to see how this plays out. But your other contrarian captain choice, Mr. Jared Goff.
Yeah, and because Jared Goff doesn't have the rushing upside, he's very easily overlooked. But we have seen there are games where he does get into a shootout and the offense just runs through him to such a degree that he ends up having a wild ceiling game. When they played Buffalo earlier this year, he had a 40-point game on DraftKings scoring because he scored so many passing touchdowns, had so much passing volume overall. And that is very much a scenario that can happen in this matchup where even if Jahmyr Gibbs is doing well, it could be through the pass game. It could be through receiving touchdowns. And so I like having Jared Goff also in there as an option because then it also allows you to really spam some of the Detroit pass catchers and get different that way.
Our next section here is the first mate. Every captain needs a reliable crew. These are going to be the standouts that maximize your lineups. We love Jaden Daniels. Might as well love his top target. Talk to me about Terry McLaurin.
Exactly. If you're playing Jaden Daniels, you need to be playing Terry McLaurin almost in all of your lineups, just because he is clearly the number one pass catcher in this offense. I don't care what Diami Brown did last week. I don't care about what Olamide Zaccheaus is capable of doing, although I do want to play him as well. Terry McLaurin is the number one. He's going to get the most target volume and he's going to get the most important touches, especially as things get into crunch time and Washington is trying to keep their playoff and Super Bowl aspirations alive. Look for Terry McLaurin to get a bunch of targets and a bunch of volume in this matchup.
So your next reliable crew member here is going to be on the Detroit side. And I remember talking about Sam Laporta a lot in the offseason and how he was going to bust and disappoint a lot of fantasy managers, especially with where he was being drafted. But he caught fire towards the end of the year. I believe he finished as the tight end 2 during the fantasy football playoffs. You think that extends here in the NFL playoffs?
Yes. Whenever you get into the playoffs, you're going to focus on getting your best players involved. Sam Laporta is one of their best offensive weapons. I do think that trend continues. And again, I think this game is a little bit back and forth. And so they're going to need to pass the ball. So they'll need to use Sam Laporta. Jameson Williams isn't to the point where he's like commanding targets as a number 2 receiver. He's kind of a change of pace receiver. They design a lot of interesting plays for him. But Sam Laporta, he's often the second read after Amon-Ra St. Brown, if not the first read. So I like going after him in this matchup. I also think he could get overlooked because of the point that you made, where people are hurt by him because he didn't perform that well this year, but he's been getting really good volume down the stretch, and there's no reason to believe that shouldn't continue into the divisional round.
All right, our next section is the deck scrubbers, the cheaper punt plays that can make a lineup based on one play and or limited opportunities. Let's stay on the Detroit side. Tim Patrick has made a name for himself here as the number 3 wide receiver in Detroit.
Yes, he has. And really what's happening here is there's a lot of expensive players that I've already talked about. You have to get really cheap. And Tim Patrick is one of the few players that price point that has the upside. He can score, he can get 2 catches for 50 yards, which is pretty good. He can score touchdowns. And so I would like him as a punt option just to be able to fill out your roster and provide some of that upside. He's also cheaper. I mean, he's cheaper than the kickers, and it's even hard to get to the kickers in this matchup if you're playing the elite players. So having Tim Patrick in your lineup gives you a decent amount of upside, especially compared to the people around him at this price point. Like, it gets really gross really quickly. Like, he's not that much more expensive than, I forget how to pronounce his first name, but the running back Vaikai on the Detroit Lions side. Yeah, you don't even know.
Sion Vaki, I believe his name was.
Vaki, there we go.
Vaki,
yeah,
something like
that guy. We don't even know his name. And yet Tim Patrick is like $1,000 more than him.
Okay. Interesting. Good to know. Good to know. All right. The next guy on your list here, you kind of teased him earlier, Olamide Zaccheaus. I am curious why you prefer Zaccheaus versus Dyami Brown, who did pop last week, and we all know is on Amon-Ra St. Brown's list of players that was drafted ahead of him, and Dyami Brown's got something to prove now too, right?
Yeah, I forgot about that thing with Amon-Ra St. Brown, but it's really, I've seen Zaccheaus show it and prove it more over more games than I have Dyami Brown. I could see in this slate people being like, "Oh, Dyami Brown, like, okay, he's the new stuff. Let's go to him." And then Zaccheaus gets lower roster share. I kind of want to lean into that and be like, no, Zaccheaus is still the number 2 receiver in this offense, and I'm going to stick with him when he might be lower roster share. It's going to be an easier way to get different. So it's really just thinking that what I saw in weeks like 14 through 18 with Zaccheaus is what is actually true, and what happened in a single game sample size with Dyami Brown is less relevant.
100%. One more time, you can play these showdown slates against us over on DraftKings. Just hit the link in the description on the video you're watching on YouTube, or via the podcast that you're listening to on your favorite podcast feed. Our final section, the Kraken, the lineup trap that sinks the ship. Couple of Detroit options here, Austin. Not playing both Detroit running backs. Let's start there.
Yeah, I think this is a really interesting way to get different. I feel like people are going to want to do one or the other because they think that they will vulture each other. But Washington has a bad run defense. And I could easily see a game where Jared Goff throws the ball all of 18 times. It's happened before this year. And the 2 running backs combine for 40 touches, and they soak up all the touchdowns. So I think it's an interesting way to get different, especially in large field tournaments. In small field tournaments, I feel less like I need to do it. Like, I probably wouldn't do it in our contest unless I just wanted to like be a jerk and try and be like better than everyone. But I think in large field tournaments, yeah, he will do it. But in large field, I think it's a really easy way to get different because I don't think people will want to do it, especially with David Montgomery coming off the injury.
We talked a little bit about how we can definitely see this game being a big-time shootout. Don't like the Detroit Lions defense here, huh?
I don't, and it's in part because I think it's a shootout, but it's also in part because of what we talked about with Jaden Daniels and him being able to protect the ball really well. He doesn't fumble the ball a lot. He doesn't throw a lot of interceptions. He's going to take care of the ball really well unless we see an anomaly of a game, which is why in large field tournaments it's probably worth one Detroit defense lineup to play into that anomaly upside. But in most small field contests, I don't think the Detroit Lions defense are going to be the true difference maker. I think there's going to be a lot of offense to go around that'll make those offensive weapons more viable in your DFS showdown slates.
All right. One more time, head over to trophysmack.com/WOFF. That's WOFF. Get all of your championship needs and help us continue to support women in sports. He is Austin Amandolia at Austin_FFL. I am Josh Hudson at the One Hudsonian. You, of course, can follow Club Fantasy across the socials at Club Fantasy FFL. This has been our DFS Showdown slate breakdown of the Washington Commanders versus the Detroit Lions. We will be covering all of the divisional round NFL games from a DFS perspective right here, wherever you're listening or watching. So be sure to subscribe and like the video and all that good stuff. And we'll see you for the next video.